Joe Biden's running for president again. It would appear as though he's going to announce tomorrow.
I hope so.
You know better than anybody else what goes into running for the highest office in the land, what goes into being president. You've observed what it takes to do the job, what it takes to get the job. Is Joe Biden up for it?
Well, I think that'll be for the American people to say. But I have to tell you, I know his announcement is imminent tomorrow. Yeah. I welcome President Joe Biden taking his record to the American people. I mean, the record of the Biden
administration. So he's not too old to be president?
Well, I think the American people could make that decision, Leland. Right. But I want to say to you, the record of the Biden administration at home and abroad is a record of failure. Joe Biden has weakened America on the world stage. He's weakened our economy. He's created great hardship for American families with record inflation, a crisis at our border, a crime wave in our cities, a war on energy that's driven up energy prices for working families, and, of course, that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, I believe, has emboldened the enemies of freedom around the world. And so look, the American people can decide about the age requirements for candidates for office. I'll let them decide that. But I honestly believe that we as Republicans would look forward to taking on the record of the Biden administration and taking our record, in our case, to the American people.
Part of that record is going to be what happens with the debt ceiling, whether or not House Republicans, a number of whom are your old friends from the Freedom Caucus, decide to raise the debt limit or hold tight.
Right.
Every time there's a government shutdown or a showdown over any of these things, Republicans lose, whether they're in the White House. It happened to you and former President Trump. You guys got blamed. It happens when it's Congress doing it, and it's always blamed on Republicans.
Right.
Is there any way to get out of this debt ceiling mess without either A, acquiescing to the White House, or B, having Republicans blamed?
Well, I think there is, but it all begins with Republican unity. I'll just be clear on that point. Look, we have an obligation to uphold the full faith and credit of American currency. The Constitution requires that. But the fact that Joe Biden has gone 80 days and refused to even have a conversation with Speaker McCarthy is unconscionable, particularly when you look back. I mean, rewind the tape, Leland. It was about a decade ago when he was vice president, when he boasted about how closely he worked with House Republicans to negotiate an agreement to move forward. Now he's sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office saying, I won't even talk about it. So I think at a time when our national debt is the size of our nation's economy, Speaker McCarthy is right to say we're going to make a down payment on fiscal responsibility again, and I hope that Republicans rally around that cause and give him the kind of united support necessary to demand that Joe Biden and the Senate Democrats come to the table.
Yesterday, you said that you were going to tell the truth before the January 6th grand jury. Is there anything that they could ask you that is not already in your book, or that you have said in the interviews that you've given since?
Well, let me first say that I was very pleased that for the first time in history, a federal court recognized that the Constitution's speech and debate protections do apply to the Vice President of the United States. When this subpoena first arrived, I knew that it was unconstitutional at its core. We brought that challenge. We prevailed on that principle, but now the court has outlined what the law requires of in this instance, and I've made it very clear. We'll comply with the law, and we'll tell the truth. But as to your question, I will tell you, I can't imagine what else there is to tell. I mean, the American people lived that day. We saw it unfold in real time, and in my book and in countless interviews. I've told the American people what occurred that day, and I'll be telling the same story when I sit down.
So let me just button this up for a second. You're a lawyer. You know what the laws are probably better than most of the people who were there with you as all these events were unfolding. Is there anything that you could tell the grand jury that either the former president or a member of senior staff that you saw and observed commit a crime?
Well, I just don't know, Leland, if it's criminal to take bad advice from lawyers. And this was an instance, as I wrote about at great length in my memoir, where in the immediate days leading up to January 6th, I saw a cast of characters, lawyers that frankly should never have been allowed on the White House grounds, giving the president counsel that was just simply not grounded in history or the Constitution and the law. So we'll comply with the law. We'll tell our story. But I will tell you, in traveling in Iowa, traveling in Georgia over the weekend,
that's not what people are talking about. That's what we're going to talk about.
Nobody is talking about this.
That's what we're going to talk about
anywhere that I go.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.